Hey, let's throw out the Haven Lifeline. We've been going to the Facebook group, The Basement, for some questions. What I'd like to do, OG, is actually go back to some of our old episodes and some questions people have had about our episodes. First of all, this was Tony. Tony heard our special episode about Silicon Valley Bank and what was going on at the time. Tony asked, is my IRA safe if the institute it's held at fails? I was listening to the special podcast about the bank collapse, and I believe the OG said that stocks are safe because they are mine and they're just being held at the bank. He said he saw a piece recently that he thought might have said the opposite. So we wanted to get some clarity. OG, if I have an account, IRA or brokerage account, I got stocks in it, and the firm goes under that holds it, what happens to my stocks?
Yeah, well, the biggest difference between FDIC insurance and any insurance that you have through your Custodian, Fidelity, or Vanguard, or Schwab, or whatever, is that FDIC insurance covers you if the bank goes out of business and they don't literally have the money, right? You go to the bank and they say, we're out, which is what was happening with those two banks in the last couple of weeks. The FDIC steps in and says, here's how much money you had, and here you're made whole. The difference is that when you own shares of a company, you're a shareholder of that firm, Apple, let's say, and that's, you're just holding the stock at a place that is convenient for you, i.e. Schwab or Fidelity. Because you can go directly to Apple, well, not in all cases now because most companies have gotten rid of this, but a lot of times you can go directly to that company and say, hey, I've got $10,000. I would like to buy part of your company. And they have a process for that. You can go directly to that institution. They send you a stock certificate. I've got a couple hanging on my wall. Or they'll send you a statement that says, we've got your name down here, right? So SIPC insurance doesn't cover you for the volatility of your stock, which is what some people think. Like if I buy Apple stock and it goes down, I've got insurance against that. No, that's if somebody does something really below board and doesn't process your trade, runs away with your money, that sort of thing, like embezzlement, like real hardcore stuff, in addition to the criminal effect of that and the civil fines and all that sort of stuff. But brokerage companies don't really go bankrupt, not at the rate that banks do, because they're just in the business of holding on to stuff. Banks have to lend money and make loans and process that, make sure that the cash flows are right, because they're not going to have all of the deposits in the bank at the same time, right? They send it out. Whereas brokerage companies, some of them do that, obviously with margin lending and whatnot, but the capital requirements are a lot different on the brokerage side. So I suppose there's a circumstance in which a brokerage firm could fail and you could lose your money. But I think that because of the fact that you own the actual shares of the entity and you're just merely using that brokerage company as a conduit, the worst that actually in practicality would happen is that you would lose access to it for a period of time while they figure out, how do we sort this out? Because your 100 shares of Apple are still your 100 shares of Apple, regardless of if Schwab's in business or not.
I think it does bring up the point, OG, too, that with your brokerage account, stick with the big names that you've heard of before. Stick with companies that have a reputation, that have been there, that a lot of other people are with.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that your money at a brokerage company is separated from Schwab's money at the brokerage company. So Schwab doesn't use your money to go get loans to build an office building. They don't use your money to collateralize anything. Your money is completely separate from their money. Now, Schwab makes money, right? They make money from trading and, from you trading and, all those other sorts of ways. And that part of the business, they could be, inefficient with, right? They could build too many buildings or hire too many people. And if they run out of money, that could cause them to go bankrupt. But because your money is never used for that purpose, you don't have to worry about that their failure turning into your failure.
And just to be clear, so we don't get, mail from the supreme money nerds, that you can give them permission to borrow your shares to trade. But the key word there is borrow, OG. It's still your stuff, and they can use your stuff to go trade it with other people, correct?
Yes, but that's more of that side of the business, right?
Yeah.
Like Schwab wouldn't go out of business because the stock that they lent to somebody for short selling went sideways.
Right.
They would go out of business because they had too many employees and paid too much in office space rent and, whatever. Like they were just dumb with any other, just like any business. And part of the reason that we talked about with the banking business, part of the reason that it didn't work for them was because of the fact that they were taking customer money, which this is how banks do it, taking customer money and using it to lend to other people and invest for the future. But the rates at which they were investing it were too low to turning around paying higher dividends because interest rates were rising. Meanwhile, they've got these big bonds, these big investments that they can't sell that are illiquid. So it just kind of fed this, this cash flow issue basically.
It's a whole different deal.
Whereas in your brokerage account, Schwab's not going to take your money and use it to go buy an office building.
Yeah, I just wanted to avoid the 20 emails I was going to get just by.
Yeah, and it's way more complicated than that. Yeah, it's way more complicated than that. And at some level, I understand that for normal people, we normal people with less than $250,000 in the bank, this is all a moot point, really. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have $250,000 in your checking account, it doesn't matter. This doesn't matter to you. It's a pain in the butt, if your bank goes under, but you're covered. And I understand part of the issue is, if you're a business owner and you've got millions of dollars and tens of millions of dollars, there's bigger issues and you have to take different risk management approaches then. But I think for the vast majority of people that are listening, this isn't anything to worry about.
I like how you phrase it. It's a pain in the butt if your bank goes under. Like if they don't have Lunchables at the grocery store when you go shopping. Oh, damn, my bank went under again. There goes my Tuesday.
Well, no, I mean, it happens all the time. That's the thing, is that it really does. These two happen to get a lot of publicity, I should say. But it happens quite frequently on an annual basis. And there's a process for that. And yes, it is a pain in the butt. And yes, if you're not thinking about it, then yeah, your check will bounce or you won't be able to make rent. But hopefully it's not so much of an issue that is not solvable within a week. I mean, look at this. They took over this thing in 7 days. You know what I mean? They solved it in a week. So,
We also got a note from Paul about a recent episode. Paul just had a comment, guys, about our game show episode featuring OG Len Penzo and Paulette Perhatch, where they were guessing 10 of the most expensive life occurrences, life events. What are the most expensive things in your life and ways to make them less expensive? And number one on that list was having children, which I believe, Doug, without going back directly to the piece, they estimated either $200,000 or $250,000 per kid. And Paul said that podcast episode hit, period, hard, period. He said, if anything, their estimate for kids is low. Once you figure in aspects like if a parent decides to stay at home or go part-time, right? The loss of earnings for that, you decide to stay in a local area for the schools instead of pursuing opportunities in different locations, although this might help keep the low-cost mortgage. Drop in brain power, prioritizing kids over corporate demands, so potentially missing out on other opportunities, etc. Maybe $250,000 is probably low per kid. I never did the math, but I figure each kid adds 2 to 3 years to our career, which probably works out, generally speaking, that the amount you spend on kids rises with your income. Doesn't necessarily have to, but tends to. Totally worth it, he said. But as one of the crazies with 5 or more kids, your episode hit home. Paul's got 5 kids. So he probably, how hard do you think he was hitting his keyboard when he said this? Yeah. Hell yeah, it's $250,000.
Do you think it was our episode that made him realize kids were expensive? He's got 5 of them, but it didn't happen until he listened to our episode.
Paul was more like,
that's
duh.
Where money's going. I didn't really think of it.
I wondered. I thought there might have been a hole in my pocket. Yeah, big thanks for that, Paul. If you've got a note for us, Joe at stackingbenjamins.com. But you know what? If you have a call for the Haven Lifeline, stackingbenjamins.com/voicemail, and OG is happy to answer your question about money like he did today. stackingbenjamins.com/voicemail. And if you're brave enough to call, you know what? We will send you a Stacking Benjamins piece of swag just for calling in